The most toxic habit I had for 50 years wasn't drinking, smoking, or watching Real Housewives. It was something sneakier. I thought it just made me a nice person, but it actually drained my energy, wrecked my confidence, and messed up my relationships. And especially if you're a woman, I bet you've done it too. And the scary part is you may not even recognize the damage it's doing until it's too late. The toxic habit is, did you guess? People pleasing. Hey, I am Tess. And for decades, I didn't even realize what I was doing. I just thought I was being kind. But in reality, I was people pleasing and it was running my life. If you think you might be a people pleaser, I've got a little quiz. See how many of these you answer yes to. Do you say yes when you want to say no? Do you apologize for things that aren't your fault? Do you worry a lot about what other people think of you? Do you hide your true opinions to avoid conflict? Do you feel guilty when you put your own needs first? If you said yes to any of these, congratulations, you're in people-pleasing territory. No trophy for this one though. And you're not alone. That was me for decades. And in this video, I'm gonna show you where people-pleasing starts, why it's so toxic, and how you can stop it. But here's the thing, the hardest one is the last one I'm gonna share, but it's also the most important. None of the others even matter until you nail this one. Drop me a quick yes in the comments if you found yourself saying yes too much this week. Now, I checked yes to every single one of those questions in the quiz. But here's the thing about people pleasing. For most of us, it starts in childhood. As kids, we learn really quickly what gets us praise and what gets us in trouble, especially with our parents. And once we learn that we get love once we make others happy, it tends to stick. For me, I had a very demanding Asian mother who had very specific ideas of what would make me a good daughter. And if I fell short, she would let me know. Very loudly. And let's not forget, we are Gen X. Our parents weren't exactly handing out participation trophies, were they? They were more like, I'll give you something to cry about. We got grounded, spanked, or shamed if we fell out of line. So we learned to stay in line. Now, of course, kids need discipline, but for me, the punishments weren't well balanced with the praise, and there wound up being a lot of conflict in my house, which is something I wanted to avoid. Even when I started rebelling as a teenager, deep down, I was still wired to chase approval. So on the outside, I may have looked like I didn't care, but on the inside, I cared a lot. And this is why people pleasing is so hard to shake. You learn it as a kid, but it doesn't just stay in childhood. It follows you into adulthood, into your relationships, into your career. And I'll give you some examples in just a sec. And here's the problem. If your happiness depends on the good opinion of others, frankly, you're screwed. People pleasing doesn't actually make people love you more. It attracts the wrong people, it builds resentment, and it keeps others from really knowing the true you. That's not love, it's dysfunction. I'm ashamed to admit I learned the hard way, and I'm gonna show you why. So there are 4 major ways why people pleasing is so toxic. And the first one is you forget who you are. When you're always asking, what do they want? You stop asking, what do I want? And that's exactly what happened to me. I was married to a man who always put his needs first, and I went along with it. For example, he had a mountain of debt, so I took out a $20,000 student loan that I didn't even need in order to pay off his credit cards. Then he wanted to move to Europe for a while, which was sure exciting, but not exactly smart given our debt, but I still went along. Next, he wanted to move to New York so he could become a famous writer. I left my family, my friends, and everything I knew behind, and I was miserable. And when we moved there, we had agreed to give it 2 years and then move back if it didn't work out. But instead of honoring his promise, he applied to grad school out there without telling me. And when I finally held my ground and made him keep his promise to move back, he resented me. And the marriage ended shortly after that. And here's the part that still stings to say. I wasn't living my life. I was living his. And that leads into number 2. The second reason why people pleasing is so toxic is that you build resentment. When you keep compromising your needs to make others happy, eventually you start to resent them. Because maybe you were fine yielding to their needs in the beginning, but after a while it starts to wear on you and you start saying, what about my needs? Why don't they ever think about me? And if things don't change, the resentment just builds and builds, and eventually it's gonna come out, either in passive-aggressive comments or withdrawal or just full-on blow-ups. And that damages relationships more than honesty ever would. With my ex-husband, I grew to hate him, but I stuck with him for 11 years until it came to a head. And I remember one night I was just crying on the sofa next to him, and he didn't even notice because he was too busy watching the X-Files. But shortly after that, he became part of my X-Files. Get it? X-Files? By the way, if you are nodding along thinking, yep, that sounds like me, then go ahead and hit subscribe. I've got a lot more about how to break free from this trap. Okay, now let's talk about the next way people-pleasing wrecks your life. So the third way is that you attract the wrong people. This was so big in my life. Now here's a revelation. Takers love people pleasers. If you are always bending for someone, then you end up surrounding yourself with people who never bend for you. And sadly, even after my marriage ended, I didn't fully learn that lesson. I still wound up attracting all these selfish people. Maybe you have too. You keep ending up with partners who don't give back, or bosses who keep piling more and more on your plate, or friends who only call when they need something. That's not a coincidence. People pleasers are magnets for takers, and the more you give, the more they expect. When you don't value yourself and your needs, you always wind up with people who don't value you either, or only value you for what you can do for them. And when that happens, you start to think that's normal, that your needs are optional. And the fourth way that people pleasing is so toxic is this hidden toll of burnout and health. And here's the scary part. If you keep this up for long enough, it's not just your relationships that suffer. The stress of constantly ignoring yourself builds up in your body. For me, it showed up as depression, exhaustion, and never being able to relax. And also, those years of resentment turns into anger, and carrying that around is not healthy for anyone. People pleasing doesn't just hurt your confidence and your relationships, it can wreak havoc on your health. And that's when you realize the damage doesn't show up until years later. So now you know why people pleasing is so toxic. The good news is, once you recognize that you're doing it and how bad it is for you, you can stop. I'll show you how I finally stopped people pleasing and how you can too. The first thing to do is understand your patterns. The first step is awareness. You've got to catch yourself in the act. For me, people pleasing showed up as saying yes too much, suppressing my real opinions, over apologizing, basically putting myself last. So this is when I really started to see my people pleasing habits. I remember this exact moment. So I was dating somebody, and one night he went out with his friends, and he texted me around 1 a.m. to tell me that he was home. So I went to sleep, and then around 3:30 in the morning, I got a phone call, and it's him. And he was on the side of the road. He had been driving drunk and got a flat tire, and I needed to come pick him up. So he lied about being home, and he drove drunk. And when we got back to my place, obviously I wasn't very happy, but he started yelling at me, and he was kind of a mean drunk, and we started fighting, and it was pretty rough. And then the next morning when he was sober, he actually apologized for it, and then I said, "I'm sorry too." And then the next thing he said, I'll never forget, it was like a light bulb moment for me, and he said, "Why are you apologizing? You have nothing to be sorry for." And I realized, holy shit, he's right. Why am I apologizing? He messed up, not me. I didn't do anything wrong. And then after that, I really started looking out for these patterns and identifying when I was saying sorry when I had nothing to be sorry for. Once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. And that's what gives you the power to change. Okay, the number 2 thing you need to do is to set boundaries and stick to them. So I'm gonna break down boundaries into 3 parts. And the first step is to define what these boundaries are for yourself. Figure out what's acceptable and what isn't. Write them down if you have to. And second, communicate your boundaries to other people. This might feel a little uncomfortable, but if you help them understand why you're setting these boundaries and how it's going to help your mental health and how it has hurt your mental health in the past, they might just respect them. And if they don't, maybe you need to make some decisions about those relationships. And the third is holding yourself to them. And that is absolutely the hardest part, but it is the most important, because if you don't hold yourself to them and hold other people to them, then you're gonna be a doormat again. Sorry to say that, but it's true. So here's a non-romantic example I have. So my HOA really wanted me to join the board. And the old me would have said yes and then resented it every single day. But the new me said, no, I will not do that. Hi, you wanna come up? Okay, someone really wanted to come up and say hi, just wouldn't leave me alone. So here we are. All right, so the HOA, yes. I knew it would really stress me out, and so I said no. I've worked really hard to keep my peace and keep my anxiety at bay, and okay, fine. So fickle. But guess what? Some people were mad about it, but I don't care. I'm choosing myself and I'm just fine with that. Suck it, HOA. Saying no is a muscle that you build. It's not always easy at first, but the more you do it, the stronger it gets. But even boundaries are only going to take you so far, which is why this next step is the most important of all, hands down. You need to learn to love and respect yourself. Learning to love yourself enough that you don't need other people's constant approval. Because here's the thing, people pleasing is really about chasing validation. We think that if other people like us, then we're worthy. But you cannot let your self-worth hinge on other people's opinions, because you cannot control those opinions. And if you're attracting selfish people, they are always going to find ways to dig at your self-worth. But when you love yourself and when you build real confidence, you stop outsourcing your worth to other people. I love that, outsourcing your worth. No, you got to keep that in-house. That's the game changer. Now, learning to love yourself isn't easy and it can take some time, but I do break down the steps to get there in this video here, which you should watch next, because once you have it, you're taking a real meaningful step toward self-love and self-confidence. And to start, you need to keep telling yourself what I keep telling you. What's that? Oh yeah, you're a bad mama jamma. I'll see you in the next video.